Okay, so these notes are about slope-intercept form. So it's TEAC 85I, and it's pretty much what we did the most of the second into the third 6 weeks. We talked about slope and we talked about y-intercept because then we were doing slope-intercept form, which is the y equals mx plus b. So the TEAC says that you're going to be able to write this equation in this form, and this learning target says if I'm given the slope and the y-intercept, but we're going to talk later on in this video about how to find the slope and the y-intercept from tables, graphs, and like verbal descriptions, like word problems. Okay, so the first thing we need to remember is in this formula, m stands for the slope. So write that in here, slope. And b is the y-intercept. Okay, and then we're going to talk more about how to find these things later on. Okay, so if I say I have a line with a slope of 8 and a y-intercept of 10, then the equation is, this is m, 8, and b is the y-intercept, so 10. So our equation would be y equals 8x plus b, so plus 10. Okay, so if we have a line with a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of -5, 1/2 is going to be m, our slope. -5 is going to be b, our y-intercept. So our equation is going to be y equals 1/2 x minus 5. Okay, so now what if they give us an equation? Can we find the slope and the y-intercept? Okay, so in the equation y equals 3x plus 4, the slope is, well, m is right in front of x, so it's 3. And the y-intercept is kind of what's tacked on the end there, so that is 4. Okay. Okay, in the equation y equals -2x minus 2, m is my slope, that's right in front of x, so the slope is -2/3, and the y-intercept is -2. Okay, I think I put this graph here because I wanted to talk about, like, so what? So we have this equation, -2/3 x minus 2. Okay, so you don't have to be able to do that this year, but you will next year in algebra. So let's just look and see what this looks like on a graph. So b is -2, so that's where we begin. Okay, that's where, not really where the graph starts because this is a 4-quadrant graph. It's a line, it goes on forever, but that's where we start counting from. And what do we count? We count our slope m for the movement. So remember that the slope is the vertical change over the horizontal change, and since the y-axis is vertical, it's a change in y. Since the x-axis is horizontal, it's a change in x. So -2/3, that means my line is going to go negative this way. Okay, so I have that to make sure, I'm doing it right. So -2, so that would be down 2 in the negative direction, 3 in the positive direction, 1, 2, 3. That would be my next point. And now you could totally draw a line now, but I can't draw a very straight line now, so we're going to keep dotting. Down 2 over 3. Down 2 over 3. Okay, and then we're going to draw a line. And so I can see what my pattern is doing. So to get the other end of the line, I'm going to go up 2 and now to the left 3. Up 2 to the left 3. Okay, so that would be the line, the graph of the line, whose equation is y equals -2/3 x minus 2. Okay, so here we have, here we have the writing equation given a table. So your target is you can find the slope and y-intercept if you're given a table, which is the first step in doing this. And then you're going to use that information to write an equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, so to find the slope, which is the rate of change. In the table, we talk about the change in y over the change in x. Okay, and you only need 2 points to do this with. You don't need the entire table. Okay, so the change in y, to go from 3 to 5, I add 2. And the change in x, I add 1. So my slope is 2 over 1. So I can just write that as 2. Okay, when x is equal to 0, finding the y-intercept, that's where x is equal to 0, because the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. That's y, that's x. So right there, that's your y-intercept. So on a table, I am looking for where x equals 0, because all the points on the y-axis have an x coordinate of 0. So I look at my table and look, it's right there. So when x is 0, y is 5. So then I'm just going to plug that in here. Okay, so in here, I was thinking more along the lines of this would go in here. And then you're going to write your equation, y equals 2x plus 5. Okay? Alright, so if I were you, I would pause this video and I would do the next couple. And then I would play it back to see if I was right or not. Okay, because you guys need to practice. And this is taking the place, it's giving you credit back, so you kind of should try to do some stuff on your own. Okay. Alright, so let's see how you did. So change in y over change in x. Negative 2 to 0 is plus 2. 0 to 3 is plus 3. So my slope is 2 over 3. Okay. Do not change that to a decimal. Please just leave it 2/3. It doesn't end. It's not a terminating decimal. So it really doesn't make sense to multiply it by anything. Okay, when x is equal to 0, so I need x is equal to 0. That happens here. Okay, be careful. You see there's another 0 here, so you really got to think about, I'm looking in the x column for the 0. So where x is 0, y is equal to negative 2. Okay, so again over here I'm writing mx plus b. So my equation is y equals m is 2/3 my slope, 2/3 x, and b is negative 2, so negative 2, or 2/3 x minus 2. Okay, this one, what do I do to 5 to get 2? Well, I subtract 3. And what do I do to 4 to get 6? Well, I add 2. So my slope is negative 3 over 2. Now you could change that to negative 1.5. You'll see it written that way, but I don't ever change it. Sorry, when I leave it as a fraction, that means something to me. That tells me I know every time the y decreases by 3, the x increases by 2. That tells me a lot more than the 1.5. Okay? Alright, so now I have to find y, but it's not in here. The y-intercept. I have to find where x is 0, but I don't see it in the table. So we're going to expand the table out. So redraw your table, take a minute and do this. Right? That doesn't take too long. Alright, so I know 4, and I see these are going by 2, so I'm going to go backwards by 2, so I can kind of fill in my table. So I would go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. Okay? So when I fill in 4, I have 5 and 2. So I just need to fill these in. So if 5 goes to 2, and to do that, to get there, you subtract 3. Then what do I subtract 3 from to get 5? Well, 5 plus 3 is 8. And what would have to come before 8? So that when I subtracted 3, I'd get 8. That would be 11. Okay? So again, mx plus b, so y equals, and the slope is negative 3/2. x is next in the equation. X is not part of slope though, so don't make that mistake. And there's my y-intercept. So y equals negative 3/2 x plus 11. Okay, a few more tables, only this time they're horizontal. Sometimes, that changes it. If you don't like them horizontal like this, then redraw them vertical if that makes more sense to you. It doesn't matter. It just takes another minute. All right, so I want to find slope, and I know that is my change in y. So that's going to be plus 5. For my change in x, plus 1. So it's 5 over 1, or I can just write 5. Okay, now again, I don't have my zero term here. I don't have a place for where x equals 0, so I have to go figure that out. So this increases by 5, and that pattern has to keep going, and this increases by 1, so if I decrease by 1 here, I have to decrease by 5 there, which makes the y-intercept negative 10. Since negative 10 plus 5 gives me the negative 5. Okay, so again, mx plus b is your equation, and y equals, the slope is 5, so it's 5, and then I write my x. My y-intercept is negative 10, so then it is minus 10. Okay, so here's another horizontal table. Okay, let's see. Oh, I don't like this one. It has a lot of negatives. Okay, so to go from negative 5 to negative 13, that's decreasing, because negative 13 is smaller, so I know it's minus, and 5 and 8 is 13, so I know it's minus 8. That's not a very nice looking 8. There we go. 8. All right, and then from negative 2 to positive 2, well, that's plus 4, since it takes me 2 to get from negative 2 to 0, and 2 more to get from 0 to 2. That's how I look at the negative integers that way. Okay, so my slope is negative 8 over 4, which is negative 2. Okay, and again, I do not have my y-intercept right there in the table for me. I'm going to have to go find it. Okay, so this table jumps by 4, and I know if I go backwards or forwards, I'm not going to get to 0, so I have to kind of expand my table. I know 0 comes between negative 2 and 2. In fact, it's halfway between negative 2 and 2. So that might help you, but if not, let's just go all the way out. If my slope is negative 2, that means then that every time my x goes up by 1, my y is going to go down by 2. Okay? So negative 5 minus 2 is negative 7. Negative 7 minus 2 is negative 9. Negative 9 minus 2 is negative 11, and negative 11 minus 2 is negative 13. Okay, so that makes my y-intercept negative 9, because that's what would fit in the blank to keep the pattern the same. Okay, so again, mx plus b, so y equals negative 2x minus 9. Okay, so here we have a star question, which honestly I'm not going to do because I put this on your practice that you're going to do. Okay, so you can take a minute, look at that, see what you think. I would do the problem maybe, and if there's a tutor with you, you can show them. But I'm not going to give you the answer because it is on your practice. Okay, so let's look and see what's next. I think we're going to do the graphs next. And yes, we are. Here are the graphs. Okay, so same thing, same learning target. We're going to find the slope and y-intercept, only this time we're going to be given a graph, and then we're going to write it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so on a graph, On a graph, we are still going to use change in y over change in x. Okay, so there's a couple things you can do here. What I've seen people do a lot is just pull 2 points off the graph. So 0, 5, and take that point. And here's another point. Looks like it's at 1, 3. Then they go through and they do their change in y. Let's see, minus 2. Change in x, plus 1. So the slope is 2. That's one way you could do it. The other way I see people do this is they count it off the graph. So they look at the vertical change, and I went up 2, and the horizontal change, well, I went to the left one, that's the negative direction. And 2 over negative 1 is still negative 2. Okay. The only thing I'm going to tell you about drawing on the graph these slope triangles, we call them, is you really have to look at your scale, because sometimes you'll say, oh, it went up 2, but the scale is going, the graph is going by 5s, which would mean you really went up 10, not 2, and it's really easy to make a mistake that way. Ask me how I know. Okay, so either way is fine, whichever way you want to do it. Now, here's the good news. Finding the y-intercept on a graph, super, super straightforward. It's pretty much right there. Okay, if they're asking you to find the graph, the y-intercept is going to be on there, because you need to know that. So when x is equal to 0, y is equal to, well, right there. It crosses the y-axis right there. Right here. I tell you. So that's at 5. Okay, so again, plus b, and in front of the x goes, yep, m. So this is y equals negative 2x, let me shrink it down a little bit here, negative 2x plus 5. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay, so right away, and I should have mentioned that in the first one, right away I know my slope is going to be negative, right? Because this is nice, negative, going downward, like a downward hill. Okay, so I already know it's going to be negative. So I'm putting negatives on there. Okay, so let me pick 2 points for those of you that like to do that. I always pick the 0 if I can, which, you know, happens to be the y-intercept. There we go, 0, 15. And then just another one that's easy to see. And it looks like that's going to be 25 and 14. Okay, so here's where you have to be careful if you're going to draw a slope triangle, so to speak. You might say, oh, well, the vertical change is negative 1. Fair enough. The vertical change is positive 1, but it's not. It's 25. Okay, so the slope is 1 over 25, and it's negative because that 1 would be like going in the negative direction. So over here, I see that from 15 to 14 is negative 1, and from 0 to 25 is plus 25. So my slope is negative 1 over 25. Okay, so the y-intercept when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 15. So I have that in my table, and you can see it right there. Okay, so the equation is y equals negative 1 over 25 x plus 15. And negative 1 over 25 is a terminating decimal, so if you wanted to use a decimal, you could. I don't really feel like going to get my calculator to do that, so you can do that if you like. Fractions don't bother me. Okay, so why don't you take a minute, pause the video, and see if you can do the next couple of questions, and so you know kind of what questions you would have and what you should be paying attention to. Okay, so this next one, let me make it bigger so I can see this graph. Again, if I just look at the graph, I notice a couple of things. My slope is positive. I also noticed that my scale is going by 2 on both the x and the y axis, so that's going to be important if I'm going to use my graph to find slope by counting on it. So if I go between 2 points, this vertical change you might want to say is 2, but it's really 4 because I go from 12 to 16. So the vertical change is plus 4, and the horizontal change is from 2 to 4, so it's plus 2. So my slope is 4 over 2, or 2. Okay, if you don't want to do that, then you're going to pull points off the graph here. I'm going to do 0, 8, and 2, 12, or you could even do 4, 16 if you don't want to think about what the ones in between are. That'll work too. Let's pull 2 points that are easy. And you will see here, it doesn't matter which 2 points I pick, because the slope doesn't change. It's the same like incline no matter what. So that's plus 8, that's plus 4, and my slope is 8 over 4, which is 2. See, it works out the same way. Okay, my y-intercept is right here at 0, 8. So when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 8. So mx plus b will give me y equals 2x plus 8. Okay, in the back of the page. So I have a graph here about pecans and weight, and I see the weight is going by 1. And the cost is going by tens. And my slope is positive. So it appears the more pecans I buy, the more money is going to cost me. Okay, so if I use my graph to find the slope, I pick 2 points like 0, 0, and maybe this one. Okay, I am not going up 1, I'm going from 0 to 10, so I'm going up 10. That's my vertical change. My horizontal change is going by 1, so that's 2. So my slope is 10 over 2, which is 5. My other option is to make a table, x, y, and I'm going to pick the points 0, 0, and 2, 10. Okay, and again, I see that my y is increasing by 10, while my x is increasing by 2, 10 over 2, which is 5. Okay, and then I see when x is equal to 0, y is also 0, because this is a proportional graph. So we start right there at the origin. If I buy no pounds of pecans, I spend no money. Okay, alright, so let's go fill in our equation. So again, mx plus b, which gives us y equals 5x. Because I'm not going to write plus 0, we're just going to write 5x. Alright, now the last graph doesn't have any numbers on it, so we assume that all goes by 1. Okay, and I notice it's a negative slope, so I'm going to expect my answer to be negative. So if I use my graph and I do vertical change, that's up 2 over horizontal change to the left 2, kind of like when we were translating, right? So it's 2 over negative 2, which gives me negative 1. If I use a table, I need to go find some points. I'm going to use that one, and I'll use that one. So that's at 0, negative 3, and that's at negative 2, negative 1. And I see that this increases by 2, while this decreases by 2. And again, 2 over negative 2 will give me negative 1. Okay, my y-intercept is right there at negative 3. So if I fill my equation in over here, mx plus b, so y equals negative 1x minus 3, but you're going to see it written as y equals negative x minus 3. Remember, when the 1 is a coefficient, we don't write it there. Okay, and again, this problem is a problem that's going to be on your practice in a minute, so I'm not going to do it with you, but you're welcome to look at it.